There comes a time in every person's life when the world feels strangely quiet. When you look around and realize no one is coming to save you, no one is coming to push you, and no one is coming to validate whether your steps are right or wrong. And although loneliness often feels like a punishment, it has a way of revealing something extraordinary: your hidden strength, your untouched brilliance, your untested courage. Many of the greatest leaps in human history came from people who walked alone long before the world walked with them. They didn't wait for applause, encouragement, or permission. They simply moved quietly, faithfully, steadily, until their small steps became milestones. This is the essence of rising when no one is there for you. So today, let us explore how a person can not only survive, but get ahead when the world offers silence instead of support. When you find yourself walking a path without guidance, without a hand to steady you or a voice to direct you, something remarkable begins to unfold. You start listening, not to the noise of the crowd, but to the quiet murmurs within yourself. There is a strange, almost sacred transformation that happens when you are left to navigate life alone. It is in that solitude that life itself becomes your instructor, not through lectures or structured lessons, but through subtle nudges, unexpected challenges, and moments that push you to discover your own strength. You begin to sense that independence is not a punishment, but a profound invitation to grow. When no one stands beside you to encourage your next step, you learn to sense the direction instinctively. There's a voice inside of you that has always known where to go, but it often gets drowned out by the opinions and expectations of others. When you walk alone, that voice has space to finally speak. It tells you when to move and when to rest, when to hold on and when to let go. You find that relying on yourself isn't a burden. It is a rediscovery of the quiet guidance you've always carried. Consider the young entrepreneur who sits in a cramped room late at night, surrounded by piles of packaging material and a laptop that overheats every 20 minutes. No one believes in the dream. No one understands why he pours so many hours into something so uncertain. His friends dismiss it, his family worries, yet he continues. Not because someone is cheering him on, but because something inside him refuses to let the idea die. Every order he receives, even if it's only one a day, feels like a whispered confirmation that the effort matters. That tiny apartment, which others see as a limitation, becomes his training ground, shaping his patience, discipline, and persistence. Or think of the student who works long shifts, wiping down tables or stocking shelves until midnight, only to sit down with textbooks afterward. She is exhausted, overlooked, and rarely praised. No one sees the quiet war she fights every day, the battle to keep going. Yet she studies not for applause, but for a future she has envisioned so clearly that even exhaustion cannot dim it. She may walk into exams with tired eyes, but she walks in with a spirit sharpened by necessity. And that sharpened spirit will carry her further than encouragement ever could. These beginnings look small from the outside, almost insignificant. But that's the illusion of quiet effort. It rarely looks like greatness until much later. What those early chapters are truly doing is shaping a person into someone who doesn't depend on external validation. Someone who can move without being pushed, who can believe without being reassured. Independence becomes more than a circumstance. It becomes a strength woven into the fabric of who they are. Success built alone carries a different weight. It stands steady even when the winds of criticism or doubt blow, because its foundation wasn't made of other people's praise. It was made of late nights, internal battles, private victories, and a resilience that came from meeting life without a cushion. Success that grows in silence becomes deeply rooted, because it didn't sprout from the shallow soil of approval. It grew from the rich soil of personal conviction. When the world is quiet, it's easy to assume you've been abandoned. But what if the silence is not neglect? What if the silence is life's way of giving you space to become who you need to be? Noise is comforting, but it is often distracting. When the applause fades and the opinions fall away, you finally hear yourself clearly. You begin making choices that come from your own wisdom rather than borrowed ideas. You start recognizing what genuinely resonates with you and what simply echoes the expectations of others. There is a moment, an unmistakable moment, when you realize that the absence of support has carved something rare within you, the ability to back yourself, and that ability is priceless. Most people stumble not because the world is against them, but because they've never learned to trust their own judgment. They fall apart when approval disappears, unsure of their worth without it. But when you've walked alone, when you've relied on your own instinct and survived your own doubts, you develop an inner confidence that cannot be taken away. Life has a curious way of strengthening what it isolates. Think of the tree standing alone in an open field. With no neighboring trunks to shield it from wind and sunlight, it grows roots that dig deeper and branches that stretch wider. It becomes resilient not despite its solitude, but because of it. In the same way, standing alone teaches you how to endure storms, how to bend without breaking, and how to rise again with even stronger roots. You start to notice that you no longer crave constant reassurance. You don't wait for someone to tell you you're capable. You don't wait for perfect conditions or guaranteed outcomes. Your independence becomes a quiet force guiding you. It becomes the reason you take risks others avoid, the reason you persist where others quit, the reason you rise from setbacks with a clarity that surprises even you. This self-reliance doesn't mean shutting out the world or refusing help when it is offered. It simply means giving yourself permission to grow without depending on anyone's permission. It means showing up for your own life with a commitment that does not crumble at the absence of support. And as time goes on, you begin to see that the season of walking alone was not a detour, not a misfortune, not a tragic stretch of your story. It was the place where you learned your strength, where you met your resilience, where you developed the vision that will carry you forward. It was the sacred training ground where you learned to trust yourself. And that trust will remain long after the circumstances change, long after people come and go, long after success finds you. Because once you have learned to rise alone, no setback, no criticism, and no silence can ever truly stop you again. Pain often arrives uninvited, like a storm that sweeps in without warning. And our first instinct, almost always, is to resist it, to tense up, to push it away, to insist that life should not be this hard. But pain has always been more than an obstacle. It is a signal, a message from the deeper parts of existence that something within you is shifting, stretching, transforming. Growth never happens in the spaces where everything feels comfortable and familiar. It happens in the hard edges of experience, where your old self begins to crack so that something new can be born. When you walk through life without support, you feel pain more sharply. There is no one to cushion your fall, no hand to help you stand, no voice to say, "You're doing all right." And so the exhaustion comes in waves. There are days when you drag yourself out of bed with a heaviness you can't explain, days when doubt feels like a weight pressing against your chest. You stare at the path ahead, and it stretches into the distance with no end in sight. But what if this difficult stretch, the one that feels unbearable, is actually the very place where you're learning to carry strength you didn't know you possessed? Pressure has always been the birthplace of power. Nothing strong is born in the absence of force. Steel doesn't emerge from calm temperatures, but from intense heat. Diamonds don't appear because life is soft. They form because carbon endures immense weight and pressure until its very structure changes. Even the human heart, that quiet drum inside the chest, only grows stronger when it learns to resist, when it learns to push through. Nature has been whispering this truth since the beginning. Resilience is created in difficulty, not in ease. Think of a person lifting weights at the gym. The muscle grows only when it is torn, only when it is pushed beyond comfort. If the weights were light, if the effort were easy, nothing would change. Pain is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of expansion. And the same principle applies to life. Whenever you face a challenge that stretches you beyond what you thought you could handle, you are becoming more capable than you were before. I once crossed paths with a woman who understood this truth deeply, even if she didn't realize it at the time. She raised her children alone after her partner left, and she worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Her days were long, her nights were short, and her heart was often tired. She wanted to quit college countless times because she couldn't see how she would manage everything at once. Every exam felt like another mountain to climb, every bill another reminder of how heavy her life had become. Yet every morning she rose again. She would sit at the kitchen table before dawn, poring over chapters she barely had the energy to read. She worked, studied, cooked, cared, and kept going, even when it seemed unreasonable to expect so much from one human being. Years later, something remarkable happened. She earned her degree. She earned her promotion. She became a director at her company, and when her colleagues admired her success and asked how she managed it all, she never spoke about talent or luck. She spoke about endurance. She spoke about learning to walk with pain instead of surrendering to it. She didn't grow strong because life was kind. She grew strong because she learned how to meet suffering with courage and patience. She became the kind of person who could carry what others believed was impossible. Her story reflects a truth that many people overlook. Pain is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that life is expanding your capacity. If you feel stretched, it means something within you is growing. If you feel overwhelmed, it means you are beyond the limits of your previous self. This is the place where the most profound changes occur. Yet many people turn back at this stage. They quit too early, convinced that the discomfort means they are not capable. But what if that discomfort is the very proof that they are becoming capable? When you are in the middle of struggle, it is easy to believe the story that you are falling apart. You might think you've taken on more than you can handle, that life has placed a burden on your shoulders too heavy to bear. But look closely. If you were truly incapable, you wouldn't be standing at all. The fact that you are still fighting, still showing up, still moving forward, even slowly, is evidence of strength you may not fully recognize yet. Growth feels like confusion, like overwhelm, like pain. It never feels like comfort. There is something beautiful about what pain reveals. It shows you what matters. It forces you to strip away illusions, distractions, and unnecessary noise. It reminds you of your inner endurance, the same endurance that carried your ancestors through winters, wars, and uncertainties far greater than the ones you face. You come from a long line of people who survived storms. That survival is woven into you. Pain only awakens it, and once you learn to grow through pain instead of resisting it, you begin to see life differently. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What is this shaping within me?" You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as a participant in your own becoming. You realize that some chapters of life are not meant to be pleasant. They are meant to prepare you. They are meant to strengthen your ability to hold joy, success, love, and purpose when they finally arrive. Pain refines you. It teaches patience when everything inside you is screaming for relief. It teaches humility when you want answers immediately. It teaches trust when the path ahead is unclear. And most importantly, it teaches you to recognize your own resilience. Not the resilience you talk about, but the one you prove every time you endure another difficult day. So if you're walking through a season that feels heavy, remember this: you are not falling apart. You are being shaped. Your capacity is growing in ways you cannot yet see. What feels like struggle now will one day feel like your foundation. And the strength you gain here, the strength born from difficulty, will stay with you long after the pain has passed. When life leaves you without the comfort of a support system, something profound begins to shift within you. You realize that the world will not rearrange itself to make your path easier, nor will someone suddenly appear to push you forward when your motivation fades. And in that realization, you come face to face with a truth that is both challenging and liberating. You must become the structure that holds your life together. You must become your own source of momentum, your own voice of direction, your own steady force in a world that moves unpredictably. This is where discipline steps forward. not as a punishment, not as a rigid rulebook, but as a quiet and dependable companion that walks beside you when no one else does. Discipline is not about controlling your life with iron chains. It is about giving your future the respect it deserves. When you create routines, you create pathways. When you build habits, you build ladders. And when you show up for yourself every day, even in small ways, you begin to understand that progress is not made by explosive moments of inspiration, but by the gentle repetition of intentional action. There is a simple example that illustrates this truth clearly. Imagine two people. One is naturally gifted, smart, charismatic, overflowing with potential. The other is ordinary by comparison, but this second person has something the first lacks, a commitment to daily discipline. This person wakes up at the same time every day, studies for 45 minutes no matter how tired they are, moves their body for 30 minutes to stay healthy, and carves out at least 1 hour for their dreams. Day after day, they follow this pattern, not perfectly, but consistently enough for it to become their rhythm. They do it quietly, without applause, without anyone noticing, and yet, over time, something extraordinary happens. The talented one stagnates, drifting on the illusion that potential alone is enough. Meanwhile, the disciplined one transforms. Their life expands, their skills sharpen, their mind strengthens, their confidence grows. In the end, discipline outperforms talent, not because talent is useless, but because talent without consistency is like a seed never planted. When you commit to disciplined action, you no longer depend on fleeting emotion. Motivation is a flame that burns bright but burns out quickly. Some days it illuminates everything, other days it vanishes without warning. If you rely on motivation alone, you will rise and fall with your moods. But if you rely on discipline, you have something stable to lean on. Discipline is a structure you build brick by brick. It carries you forward even on days when you feel heavy, uncertain, or unprepared. It replaces the unreliable highs of inspiration with the steady heartbeat of routine. There is an old idea in psychology that says you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. What this means is simple. Anyone can dream, anyone can imagine, anyone can declare what they want. But your life does not change based on what you desire. It changes based on what you repeatedly do. Without systems, goals remain visions floating in the mind. With systems, they become steps on a path that leads you toward the person you intend to become. Think of your daily routine as a kind of architecture. Every habit is a beam, every choice is a brick, every repetition is cement. You are constructing something within yourself, a structure that can withstand pressure, setbacks, and loneliness. When the world becomes chaotic, your routine becomes a sanctuary. When uncertainty rises, your habits keep you grounded. When no one shows up to push you, your system pushes you itself. You may feel at times that you are too tired or too busy to build discipline. But discipline is less about doing everything and more about doing something with consistency. It is better to read 10 pages every night than to read a whole book once a month. It is better to exercise for 15 minutes daily than to exhaust yourself in the gym once a week and quit. It is better to dedicate a small portion of time to your dreams every day than to wait for a perfect moment that never comes. Discipline respects small beginnings. Life changes in quiet ways, not sudden thunderclaps. There was once a man who wanted to change his life. He felt lost, overwhelmed, and unsupported. Every year he promised himself he would do better, and every year ended the same. One day he realized that his life didn't need a grand overhaul. It needed a simple shift. So he built a system: wake up early, write 300 words, meditate for 5 minutes, and take one action toward his career. It didn't feel impressive. It didn't feel dramatic. But day after day, he followed his system. Weeks turned into months. His writing improved. His mind became calmer. Opportunities began to appear. What had felt impossible began to unfold slowly, quietly, inevitably. His system had become his support system. And that changed everything. The beauty of disciplined action is that it works even when you feel like you're failing. As long as you show up, even imperfectly, you're still moving. Discipline doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. It asks only that you return again and again, even after you stumble. Over time, this returning becomes your strength. It becomes the reason you move forward when others give up, the reason you grow when others remain stagnant, the reason you bloom where others fade. When you build disciplined systems, you no longer wait for the right moment, the right people, or the right encouragement. You become self-propelled. You become someone who can rely on their own momentum. And that independence, that ability to carry your life forward with intention, becomes one of the greatest sources of confidence you will ever know. There will be days when discipline feels heavy, when your routines feel repetitive, when you question whether any of it matters. But look closely. Every small action is bending your future in a new direction. Every repetition is sharpening your character. Every step taken without support is teaching you how powerful you truly are. Discipline is not a cage, it is a compass. It points you toward the person you want to become and keeps you aligned even when everything around you feels uncertain. And as you continue, you'll notice something extraordinary. The very discipline that once felt difficult becomes natural. It becomes enjoyable. It becomes your way of honoring yourself and honoring the life you want to create. You stop asking for permission to move. You stop waiting for someone to validate your choices. You become your own advocate, your own guide, your own steady, unstoppable force. When you learn to support yourself through disciplined action, you discover that you are stronger, clearer, and more capable than you ever imagined. And from that strength, life opens in ways that once seemed unreachable. There comes a moment in every person's life when they finally see how much of their energy has been spent trying to please the world, trying to be acceptable, trying to be seen, trying to be applauded. Most people don't even realize how dependent they are on validation until it is taken from them, until they find themselves walking alone without the reassuring nods, without the comforting praise, without the emotional safety of someone saying, "You're doing great." And it is in that moment, in that sudden quiet, that something begins to shift. The silence that once felt like a punishment slowly reveals itself as a doorway. A space where you can hear your own thoughts, your own desires, your own truth without interference. Most people remain stuck in life because they are tethered to the opinions of others. They wait for approval before taking the next step, constantly checking over their shoulder for reassurance. They need someone to clap, someone to notice, someone to agree, someone to praise. They become like ships that refuse to leave the harbor until the wind is perfect and the sky is clear. But life doesn't wait for applause. Growth doesn't wait for permission. And when you depend on the world to validate you, you hand over the authority of your life to forces that were never meant to guide you. But something beautiful unfolds when you walk alone. When applause fades and external noise dissolves, you begin to feel a different kind of power awakening deep within you. It doesn't come from people. It doesn't come from recognition. It comes from stillness, from the quiet space inside yourself that has been waiting patiently for you to listen. In that space, you find clarity, direction, and a sense of self that is not shaped by approval, but by authenticity. You begin to realize that you don't need 20 voices telling you you're good enough. You don't need the world to confirm your worth. You don't need applause to fuel your next decision. You only need one honest voice, your own. And when that voice becomes clear, steady, and grounded, the need for external validation begins to dissolve like fog in the morning sun. History is full of people who walked this path long before you. Their stories whisper a powerful truth. Approval is temporary, but inner calling is eternal. Think of Van Gogh, who lived his entire life in obscurity, selling only one painting while alive. The world didn't understand him. They saw madness where he saw magic. Yet he painted anyway, not because crowds demanded his work, but because something inside him compelled him to create. His art wasn't shaped by applause. It was shaped by the voice within him that refused to be silenced. Or think of Nikola Tesla, a genius who envisioned ideas decades, even centuries ahead of his time. He died alone in a small hotel room, unrecognized, misunderstood, forgotten by the world he had tried to illuminate. Yet he kept creating, kept imagining, kept exploring the boundaries of science, not for validation, but because the spark within him burned too brightly to ignore. Or consider writers like Franz Kafka and Emily Dickinson, whose brilliance was discovered only after they were gone. They wrote quietly, privately, unapplauded. Their words came from an inner necessity, not from the expectations of an audience. And today, those words touch millions of lives, reminding us that the value of inner truth does not depend on external recognition. These stories are not tragedies, they are reminders. They show that greatness often grows in silence. Creativity often blooms without witnesses. Purpose often matures in solitude. When the world fails to validate you, it is not always a sign that you are on the wrong path. It may be a sign that you are walking a path no one else has seen yet. And when you walk alone, when the noise of other people's expectations fades, something sacred becomes possible. You begin to listen inward. For the first time, you hear the quiet pull of your own intuition. You hear your long, buried desires. You hear the truth you've been carrying but were too distracted to recognize. You realize the silence that once frightened you is not empty at all. It is full of answers you never had time to hear before, full of direction you never trusted, full of wisdom that rises naturally when the world is no longer drowning it out. Stillness becomes a source of strength far greater than approval ever was. Approval can inflate you, but stillness fortifies you. Approval makes you temporarily feel good, but stillness makes you permanently grounded. Approval fluctuates with every passing mood, every shifting opinion, every changing trend. But stillness remains steady, like a calm lake reflecting truth without distortion. When you learn to draw strength from stillness, you become unshakable. You stop chasing applause and start creating from authenticity. You stop seeking permission and start trusting your own voice. You stop depending on others to remind you of your worth and begin recognizing it in the quiet center of your being. There is a profound freedom that arises when you no longer need the world to agree with you. You begin to move differently, speak differently, dream differently. Your decisions become clearer. Your boundaries become stronger. Your creativity becomes bolder. You start living not for recognition but for alignment. And that alignment gives you a peace that applause could never offer. When you find yourself alone, sitting in the silence, don't rush to fill it. Don't fear it, listen to it. Because within that silence is the very strength you've been searching for. It is the voice that says, keep going. The voice that says, this is who you are. The voice that says, you already know the way. And when you can hear that voice clearly, you will understand that you were never truly alone. You simply needed the world to quiet down so your own soul could finally speak. There is a quiet miracle that happens when you learn to move forward by inches rather than by leaps. It is almost invisible at first, like the slow drift of continents or the steady carving of rivers through mountains. You don't notice the change day by day, yet years later you look back and realize that the landscape of your life is unrecognizable. And the most astonishing part is that the transformation did not come from one grand gesture, one heroic breakthrough, or one perfect moment. It came from the small, ordinary, almost unimpressive steps you took when no one was watching, when no one was clapping, when no one even knew what you were trying to build. People often imagine progress as a dramatic surge, something cinematic, loud, powerful, filled with momentum and applause. But genuine progress rarely looks like that. It's much quieter. It's found in the mornings when you wake up tired but choose to begin anyway. It's found in the evenings when your plans didn't go the way you hoped, but you still take one small action toward your future because you promised yourself you would. It's found in the moments when you feel invisible, unsupported, or overlooked, Yet you continue your path not because it's easy, but because your soul refuses to remain where it is. When you walk alone, the pace of life changes. It feels different from those who have large networks, mentors at every corner, or families ready to cushion every fall. Your steps feel heavier, your progress slower, your journey longer. And there's a particular ache that comes from watching others accelerate while you are still learning how to move. But slow does not mean stuck. Slow does not mean incapable. Slow does not mean weak. Slow simply means you are building something with depth, with intention, with endurance. There was a man I once heard speak at a small gathering, a man who had no impressive background, no wealthy family, no influential connections. He grew up in a cramped apartment, sharing one bedroom with two siblings, and took a job at a local store right after finishing school. There was nothing extraordinary about his beginnings, but he made a quiet commitment to himself: improve by 1% every day. Not 50%, not 20%, just one new idea, one small habit, one slightly better choice, one minor adjustment. Day after day, he added these tiny steps into the fabric of his life. He read for 15 minutes before bed. He saved a small portion of his paycheck, even when it barely felt like anything. He practiced speaking with confidence, first in front of a mirror, then with colleagues, then at community events. He exercised for 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes only, and at first nothing changed. Weeks passed, months passed. People around him lived bigger, louder lives, but he kept moving, quietly, deliberately, patiently. By the end of the first year, he felt different. Not transformed, but sturdier. By the end of the second year, he had earned a promotion. In the third year, he started a small side business. In the fourth, he led a team of 20. By the fifth year, he stood on that stage, speaking with a calm confidence that could only come from someone who had built himself slowly, steadily, and without applause. His life didn't change because of luck or because someone discovered him. It changed because he moved forward even when the steps felt embarrassingly small. This is the truth most people overlook. Small steps compound. They multiply in the dark. They gather weight, gather direction, gather momentum. Like seeds planted in winter, they seem lifeless at first. But beneath the soil, roots are forming, strength is growing, and one day the world sees the bloom and calls it sudden. But nothing about it was sudden. The world is full of people waiting for the perfect moment to take action, waiting for motivation, waiting for support, waiting for someone to say, "I believe in you." But if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll wait your whole life. Progress is built in imperfect moments, moments when you are unsure, moments when you are afraid, moments when the future feels blurry. The power lies not in feeling ready, but in moving anyway. It lies in honoring the small agreements you make with yourself even when no one else will ever know whether you kept them. Think of how rivers form. They don't appear as grand waterfalls overnight. They begin as droplets, trickles, quiet streams barely noticeable to the world. Yet over time, with persistence and gravity as their guide, they carve through mountains. Your life is like that river. The small steps you take, your morning routines, your late-night dedication, your quiet discipline, are carving your path even when you cannot yet see the full shape of where it leads. Walking alone can feel like you are progressing at a fraction of the speed of others. But there is a hidden advantage in this slow movement. You develop inner strength that fast success can never give you. You learn resilience. You learn patience. You learn how to be the type of person who does not collapse in the face of pressure, but adapts, evolves, and continues. Those who move too quickly often crumble just as fast. But those who move slowly build foundations that last. And perhaps the greatest gift of all is this: when you walk alone, you discover that your strength is your own. You are not borrowing momentum. You are not leaning on someone else's push. Every inch you move is self-made, and that makes you unstoppable, because nothing external can take away what you built internally. So even if today your step feels small, even if it feels almost meaningless, take it anyway. Tomorrow take another. These steps are weaving the future you cannot yet see. And one day you'll look back, standing somewhere far beyond what you once believed possible. and you'll realize that every quiet, humble step mattered. It was never about speed. It was never about comparison. It was never about perfection. It was always about direction, always about courage, always about refusing to stay where you are. Move forward, even if your steps are small. They are carrying you somewhere extraordinary. If you are walking through life feeling unsupported, unseen, or unheard, understand this: you are not behind, you are not forgotten, you are not weak. You are simply in the chapter where you learn to rise by yourself. And once a person learns to rise alone, no setback can truly defeat them. Keep going, stay steady, trust the quiet work you're doing in the dark, because one day the world will see what only you know right now, that even without help, without applause, without support, you became someone powerful. And when that day comes, you won't just get ahead. You'll inspire others who are walking the same lonely road, wondering if they too can make it. They can, and so can you. You already are.